I have good news and bad news for you. The bad news first. We are in a Bitcoin bear market. We constantly swing between 65 and 70K, which is about 50% down from the last all-time high about 5 months ago. Now, the good news is that this is where real wealth is made. Most people capitulate. Most people are selling. Most people don't pay attention right now to Bitcoin. But those who do, those who actually pay attention what is going on Bitcoin's fundamentals, will create real lasting generational wealth. And today we are talking about the 10 rules that Michael Saylor is talking about for life, and how to not only survive the bear market but also how to get rich and wealthy from it. And to the very end, we are also discussing how to outperform Bitcoin with Bitcoin mining. But that's just to the very end of the episode. So stick around and enjoy. How do you survive in the bear market?
I think the most important thing, you got to keep your head about you. And there's behavioral things you can do for that. There are psychological tricks you can do for that. You know, most importantly, you need to run your personal P&L and balance sheet as if anything could happen at any time. I mean, 50% drops are not a surprise to anybody that's been in this space for longer than, you know, a few seconds. And so you should go in with a plan, understanding that this can happen at any time, even in the middle of a bull market. And as much as we say that, people still always get caught off guard. And if I'm being honest, I was caught off guard by this one, not in the sense of it, you know, did something negative to me, but I was just not expecting it. And I can see that in hindsight, you know, there were some very prescient signals, but I wasn't expecting a 50% decline. If anything, I was super bullish going into the end of last year. So it just shows you that, I mean, really anything can happen. And this market specifically will teach you all of the different things that can possibly happen in the investing universe. And if nothing else, prepare you through experience for how to navigate something like that. So I'm fine. But it's these environments where we probably learn more than any other about ourselves, about our habits with money, about our investing habits, about how exposed we really are. And so for anybody who's feeling uncomfortable in this moment, you know, that's a great signal for you to potentially adjust your behavior or adjust your mindset. And that's really all it is. It's just a signal for you to use as information to process and then take some sort of action, or maybe no action with.
Is there, I'm really obsessed actually with that personal finance topic because this is a lot of the questions that I also get from Bitcoiners. And we did a live stream actually yesterday, and someone was like, how can I handle those drawdowns better? And my first question always is, do you have debt? Do you have something that liquidates at some point? Do you have, like, where is the stress really coming from? It can come from like you not understanding the asset good enough and you are afraid it goes to zero, or you understand it well enough, but you're afraid it touches a price point that will trigger something. What are kind of the personal finance strategies or things that you have learned over the years that Bitcoiners should consider?
Well, to me personally, and I've talked about this in different contexts when I talk about the journey from real estate into Bitcoin mining, cash flow is one of the most important psychological tools that you have to deal with uncertainty when it comes to the balance sheet. So when I think of being strong financially, that means that there's consistent income coming in, ideally without any input from me, like not even needing to show up for a job, for example. And when you have a consistent income stream coming in, then at the very least, you've got this stream of energy that's always helping you make stronger decisions. Whereas if you're not currently employed, you're not currently making that much income, it's very easy for a change in the value of your balance sheet to have a negative impact on you. So that would be the first thing. And then you mentioned the other, which is leverage. And it's okay to use responsible leverage, but I can tell you from personal experience, psychologically, even in this particular drawdown, like anything that I had outstanding as a loan, even the ones that were very over collateralized, like I was shocked by how quickly we went down to the levels that we went down to. And uh, like you said, if you don't have any leverage, nobody can shake you out of your position without you opting out of it. But if you do, if you've got something that can be margin called, suddenly you have something that's in many ways out of your control that can take you out of your position and at the exact wrong time. I mean, the last time that you want to be liquidated is when you're at the, pico bottom, right? But that's what happens in margin calls. Like you get the absolute worst execution on your underlying collateral, and it's so mentally taxing to go through those periods. So for anybody that's not, I would say, like very comfortable and very experienced with it, leverage in this asset at all is a really challenging thing to navigate. And you should only do so with the utmost care, and ideally with like a sandboxed portion of your assets too. I mean, the worst thing that you can do is expose yourself completely to something like a margin call. So those would be the two main things that come to mind. Is if you've got income coming in, you've got more optionality. The more leverage you have, the more uncomfortable you're going to be in these places where, honestly, if you didn't have it, maybe you would be buying. But because you're in risk aversion mode, because you're in protection mode, you make a whole different set of decisions. And if there's one key to personal finance over the long run, it is managing your psychology. And that comes down to what systems you have in place to some extent, but there's a lot that you can do to work on yourself to make sure that you are prepared for environments like this where you have the opportunity to make hard decisions, and those hard decisions may either put you in a bad place or absolutely change your life over the short to medium term.
I wanna come back to that mindset and personal finance, because I think it's there. There's actually, when it comes to finance and money, I think what mindset and how your brain is developed is more important than like any strategy you can possibly have. But I would want to put a pin on that because I want to stay just a little bit longer on the debt side, because I always hear that if you do that, do it very responsible with a tiny amount and don't get greedy with that. And what I'm thinking is, if it's a tiny amount of your overall net worth, why do it at all? Like if it doesn't move the needle anyways for you in any amount, in huge amounts, especially with Bitcoin, like why do it at all? I mean, I can kind of understand it if you finance your home. It's tested. It's like if you can afford the home, and instead of affording the home outright and taking out a mortgage against that and buying with that money that you would have put in the house, some Bitcoin, like there's some really interesting strategies with that you can still do that are responsible for the long run. But I have a hard time thinking or defending that at all, because I don't think they move the needle if you do it in a small position, and they are too risky if you do it in a big way, if you're not like strategy. Like obviously, and they barely use that at this point.
I think it has so much to do with personal context. And I totally agree with you. Like, unless you've got a good reason to do it, why? If you're gonna pull out such an inconsequential amount that you're adequately protected, does that even move the needle? And I think it really just comes back to this holding on to not having to sell Bitcoin. And there's plenty of reasons why people don't want to, that are not just, I want to have maximum exposure. It's also a tax consideration. I mean, some people are sitting on heavily appreciated Bitcoin, but still want to get access to liquidity without having a capital gains taxable event. And so there's a lot of nuance to when do you take out leverage. But by and large, I would agree with you. For most people, you probably shouldn't do it unless you've got a good reason. And a good reason can mean a lot of things. Like you said, getting a home, that's a relatively stable asset that you can pretty safely underwrite against what you're borrowing from your Bitcoin. And if it's low enough leverage, then that's a totally adequate way to use the value, the equity that you've stored up in the Bitcoin holdings you have. But if it's just to go out and get like a depreciating car because you want it, you're putting yourself in a weaker financial position, potentially exposing yourself to some risk for an asset that's not going to help you out in the long term on your balance sheet, unless you're going and renting it out to people and treating it like an income stream and it's paying for its own debt service. But in most cases, that's not what people are doing. So there's plenty of legitimate reasons why you would want to collateralize your Bitcoin, but as we've beaten to a pulp at this point, like, you got to be super careful. This is like fire. Very powerful tool for you to change your life for the positive. Very dangerous if mishandled, and very quickly spreads to areas you didn't think would be affected if it got out of control. And so it's one of those things, like, back to the mindset. The most important thing that you can develop is the mindset of making good decisions. And that's one of those that only you can really make for yourself. And it's that split second between having an idea and executing, where you've got the chance to think a little bit deeper, check in with yourself, check in with your emotional state, if you're doing it from a place that's really well informed or just because you're impulsive. And it's the most challenging journey, but also the most rewarding journey that anybody can go on in finance and in personal development in general, is getting a chance to change the way that you react to certain stimuli. And most people just don't have that wiring. They haven't developed that wiring to do anything but their first gut reaction.
You mean the kind of stoic belief that you're not emotionally reacting to whatever input comes your way?
Exactly. And your emotional state is an environment. I mean, if you think of the physical environment, the world that you live in, there's so much stimulus that impacts how you choose to behave. If you're in a very cold room, like, you need to get a jacket on to stay warm. Otherwise, the environment is going to very meaningfully alter your state over the course of time. And your emotional state is the same. If you are running super hot and you don't mitigate that somehow internally, you take very different actions, and it's an environment that continuously influences your decisions. And most people never pay any attention to trying to shape that environment, making themselves a little bit less impulsive, or at least just watching it and being aware of it. I mean, that's really the first step. Is, am I a discerning decision maker, or do I just do whatever comes to mind first? And most people don't even know that about themselves. And so it's sort of like the unexamined room that would illuminate so much for you in terms of being able to see the way that you make your own decisions. And until you have control internally of the way that you respond, not just to external stimuli, like in your outer environment, but also to the things that happen in your inner environment, you have a very limited span of control over the way that your life unfolds. You're just kind of a passenger to whatever pre-wired programming you've been installed with over the course of your life. And I think a little bit of awareness goes a long way and really unlocks a very satisfying journey of becoming more powerful, more self-assured, more understanding as well of other people. I mean, until you've done the deep dive on your own psychology, it's very challenging to understand why other people make decisions the way that they do.
Experience goes a long way. I want to come back now to what I said before. I mean, we already are there with the money beliefs or money mindsets things, which is interesting, because we've learned so many things through our environment. We've learned so many things through the people that brought us up and the people that we love and love us in our environment around money, which is usually not a good thing. Because if you think about going out there and asking 200, 300 people what they think about Bitcoin, they usually have a pretty stupid answer to that because they haven't done the homework and they haven't really dove deep. And so the conventional wisdom usually doesn't work with innovation. It usually doesn't work with something that is brand new. It is something that protects you from big mistakes and protects you from changing things too fast and being even stoic in a way. But when it comes to something that is so radically new like Bitcoin, we all have this, I call it the legacy lens. Like we look at something from the old system. I mean, Jeff Booth talks about that a lot, judging a system within the system. And we don't go, we don't ask the fundamental questions and have this like principles thinking. And with money, we really need that. How do you see this kind of balance between having the legacy lens, if I call it like that, and having the lens of this is the current system and being kind of almost protective of the current state, which in some sense makes sense and in some sense it does not make sense, and then also going out in the limb and saying it's good that this value and this value is in our society, but it's bad that we keep this money around. Like, how do you strike that balance between how to decide what new is good and what new is like bad for us?
That's a deep question. I think most people have the right sense of what's good and bad for them at any given moment. And if anything, we often just don't trust it. Even if we understand it, we are not courageous enough to follow our own intuition or follow our own guidance. And we default to whatever is the most comfortable, whatever is the most widely accepted. And specifically when it comes to money, most of us get our early money beliefs from parents or close family, people we spend the most time with. And in money and anything else, these beliefs are not necessarily passed on with any intention. They're just passed on because you're in close proximity to them. And there's probably not much intention that went into the beliefs of the people who are influencing you, unless they are skilled themselves. Most people's parents are not financial experts, are not in any way well studied in money beliefs, money habits. And so most of us inherit junk. And it's a lifetime of overcoming that junk piece by piece and having the awareness to do so. A great piece of advice that I've heard over the last few years is, never take advice in money specifically, but really any field, from someone who you wouldn't trade places with. And so if you do not want that person's results, you shouldn't listen to their opinion on what they're telling you about. And that applies even to, the hardest one for most people is the parental relationship, because otherwise you very highly respect them. It's very important that you take into account their feedback, the way that they have the most context of anybody to advise you about you. And so we transfer the trust of those subjects onto them that they probably have no business really advising on. And so I would just tell people, like, whenever you're curating a belief, make sure that you're curating it intentionally and from somebody whose belief you would want to get the result that they have in whatever it is that you're talking about. And so to your point, most people walking around, you shouldn't be actively trading money beliefs with, because most people probably don't have the financial results that you want to create in your life. There's probably a select few people that you've identified who do have those beliefs, who you can tune yourself into and mirror to whatever extent, mirror or innovate on if you've advanced enough where you can think for yourself in a certain field. But I think it's just that we all get programmed by default by our environment, the people around us. And if you can be a little bit more intentional with selecting where you're getting programmed from, and that's the point of things like your show and information that's in this space, is that you're choosing to sync up with the people who are believing in something in the same way that you are, thinking about something in the same way you are, or even expanding the way that you think about that certain thing, not random stranger on the street who hasn't done their 100 hours or even 2 hours of research. I mean, you getting to bathe in the energy of the people who have already been through the gauntlet and exposed themselves is a shortcut to wiring yourself with the right beliefs in most cases.
I love that, and I have I heard this one time, and I loved it. If you want to be, for example, a hobby magician, or like you want to be a professional magician, and you ask a hobby magician like how to do that and what's the best way, his wisdom is probably something like, don't do it. Have a passion for magician. It's great, but find yourself a steady, safe job. Like all of those things. And if you then ask, I don't know, David Copperfield or a magician that really made it and like is professional and can live well from it, and you ask him like, how do I get to be a professional magician? How he will actually give you advice because he's actually done it. and that's why I love what you said so much, because we often we ask our bank consultant who hasn't reached financial independence or financial independence or a good financial state, otherwise he wouldn't work for the bank, what to do with our money. And I'm like, what did the bank guy proved that he can do good things with the money? I want to ask the people that are doing 100% what they want to do and are not forced to work for a big corporation that they most likely, I'm not hating on all the bank guys now, but most likely, I know some, most likely don't want to work for them, and they actually kind of hate the very rigorous structure that the banking system puts on them. And so if you want to have advice from someone in money, or how to be a professional magician, or how to be a soccer player, or how to have something that is a little bit out of the ordinary, you have to kind of ask the out of the ordinary people for that, like the David Copperfields, the people that reached very high places, because they actually have the answers to that. So I relate to that a lot, because this is one thing that I'm always so I'm wondered by that, like how people can take advice from someone that hasn't even shown any proof. Like, how can you take someone serious that hasn't shown how to do that? It's like the economics teacher that has worked as a teacher all their lives. Like, what do you know about economics? Like, you haven't done anything in the economics. The most effective way to buy Bitcoin is to DCA, dollar cost average, or ECA, euro cost average, into your Bitcoin position long term with the Relai app. It's the consistency of buying every day, every week, every month that compounds and really builds the position that you want to have in Bitcoin. And for that, I'm using Relai. Relai is Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app, the biggest one in Europe, that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. Relai is also self-custodial. So from the first second onwards, where you buy the Bitcoin on Relai, they are in your self-custodial control. They never have the keys to your Bitcoin. No freezing of your assets, no counterparty risk, no rug pulling whatsoever. And honestly, it's the simplest app that I've ever used in the whole Bitcoin ecosystem. Super easy to set up and super easy to buy your Bitcoin consistently. So set up your DCA and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Finally, we have BTC Prague back in 2026. And this year, I'm not only speaking on a panel, but I'm actually going to present an interesting new angle, a perspective, a Bitcoin thesis at BTC Prague this year for the first time ever. I've never done that on any other conference, so this will be a fun one. If you listen to this show on a regular basis, I would love to meet you in Prague this year. It's very high signal, no noise, and Prague is just a freaking amazing city with awesome drinks and a lot of good food. Use code ROBIN to get 10% off, and if you buy with Bitcoin, you get an additional 5% off your ticket price. I'll see you there in Prague.
It's it's a really good question. We talked like really briefly off camera about imposter syndrome, which we've talked about on I think our show and your show. And I think most people walk around with some degree of imposter syndrome about even what they believe. And maybe that's not the right word for it, but we're not in many cases highly convicted in our beliefs. And so if somebody comes around, like you said, a bank teller or somebody who's like reasonably believable in the subject area, they don't necessarily have to be an expert to make us doubt our own judgments of that particular subject area. It's amazing how powerful doubt from somebody who has no context and no awareness of your situation can be in influencing your decisions. And it's just like anything, it's something to be aware of. You in many cases won't even examine it when somebody's beliefs influence you, and they shouldn't be. But if you can just take that minute to recognize, hey, does this person have the expertise to get me the result that I want? If no, maybe I should just discard this and wish them well. But in many cases, we default to, that was interesting information. I'm going to input that and think about that and not really examine it too closely, maybe for many years, until I'm in a place where I can go back and unpack that certain belief that someone imprinted on me without really much conscious effort at all. It was just a mix of circumstances. But it's so impactful to curate your environment, curate your beliefs, curate your network. I'm pretty sure that's one of Saylor's rules that he describes in his like 10 rules for life is I want to say 2 or 3 of them are curate, your people, your friends, your environment, the things that are influencing you. And it's because it has such a lasting and subtle and profound effect on the way that you navigate your life. I mean, just think about, if I'm in a room of accomplished investors, that community of people not only has beliefs about money that I probably want to adopt, they also have ways of managing their psychology that are unique to them, and ways of emotionally navigating the world that are unique to that skill set, that frankly are really challenging to try and pick up in a book or in an article. You're really only exposed passively through being in the room with them. And that's a lot of why people say proximity is power, because the closer you get to the example of what you're trying to create, the more powerful the influence of that person on you. And we can get very metaphysical with this very quickly, but like you're always exchanging information with people, both in conscious and unconscious ways, and in ways that you can't even control or really become aware of in most cases. But it's always having an impact on you. It's always having an impact on your belief system, how you make decisions. And I don't think most people take it as seriously as they should. I've heard of the concept of doing a friend inventory, where you're like taking inventory of the influence that people have on you. I can't take credit for that. That was Dan Martell. And it's such a powerful thing, because we get into environments, relationships that may last many decades, and you can go a long time without evaluating if that is improving your life or actually stalling you out a little bit in some ways. And it's never an easy thing. It takes a lot of awareness, and it takes a kind of energy of activation to be able to make decisions like that in many cases. But often it's the one thing that's holding you back is one relationship, one influence, one subtle, persistent way of thinking that's slowing you down or keeping you from looking in a certain direction, that keeps you standing apart from whatever you're looking to create in your life.
I love that you brought that up from Saylor, because people focus a lot on his Bitcoin strategy and what he's doing with strategy, the company with MSTR and STRC and all of those things. But one podcast that I think didn't get enough attention that he did was with Peter McCormick, where they spent, I think, an hour or 2 hours even just going over his 10 rules. Mm-hmm. And those are the 10 rules. I think there's the 10 rules, at least they sound like back in the day when I heard the video from Michael Saylor. And I think the story goes somewhere like, he went to the party and someone asked him, hey, can you write 10 rules for life for my daughter or something like that? And he came with a pen and paper, and Michael Saylor came in that moment up with those 10 rules. And as you said, 2 of them kind of are similar or very important together. It's curate your friends and curate your environment. So where you are and who your friends are will massively impact where you go in life. And I get asked all the time on podcasts how Bitcoin changed my life. And I usually go back to the same answer. I go back to, I think that I started going to conferences, that I have now friends that are significantly more successful and wealthier than me, has changed my life, and significantly older than me. Most of the people that are in DAC now are 10, 20, sometimes 30 to 40 years older than myself. And this is probably the actual thing that changed me, and not Bitcoin, because Bitcoin I had before the podcast, and the podcast really was the personal hockey stick moment for my life, because I was all of a sudden so close to all those amazing people. And I still feel in most Bitcoin rooms like the stupidest person in the room, because there's such great, like I was recently at a Bitcoin conference, and they were like discussing their businesses and how they treat the assets, and I'm like, yeah, I have a podcast. Like I don't know why I shouldn't stand here. Like you guys have like 20 years more life experience. You have like 20. You founded 20 more companies that all were more successful than my one company is. And like it really broadens your mind and your horizon when you just be in the same room and in the same podcast as those people. And I've learned so freaking much from all of them. And I feel like I've grown up the last 2 years, at least 10 years. I don't know if this makes sense in a good way, not like my body is getting devastated. So what's your take on that? And also maybe I'll bring up the list again, because I think this list is like seriously genius, and I love almost every single one of that points, because it actually has a lot of like substance to it.
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't listened to it, I think it's just great life advice, and anywhere that we can get great meta advice that's not even necessarily Bitcoin related. I think it informs how we live our life and how we navigate the space as well in a better way. And to your point about, 2 years elapsing and it feeling like 10 in terms of progress, I think that's just a sign of a high degree of alignment. Like if I were to have look at your journey, Robin, over the last couple of years, I would say that a lot of the result of that momentum is following quite a few of the rules on this list with consistency and with persistence. And I know that you've been intensely focused on the podcast, that you've really guarded a ton of time around it, that you've trained yourself and your mind to become a better podcaster, that in many ways, just by aligning all of those qualities and being consistent for a reasonable amount of time, you can create results that most people would think are unbelievable or impossible. But you check the boxes with the right beliefs, the right way of spending your time. You also created an environment of people around you who supported that vision. I mean, think about if you were in spending your time mostly with a community of people who didn't know anybody who was running a successful podcast, and definitely didn't know anybody who was spending their time full time in the Bitcoin space. Like, it'd be a way harder belief system for you to buy into and actually allocate resources to, versus if you're in a room of people who already have successful Bitcoin podcasts, and those are your close friends. Those are the people that you trade information with and that you trade energy with. That creates a very different set of beliefs that you can act on. And in many ways just is an accelerant for you to achieve whatever you want to achieve. And I love going back to, credit to Saylor again. He's been very influential in the way that I think about the asset and many things. I mean, he's not just a great investor, he's an engineer. And the way that he talks about energy and the conservation of energy and energy leaks, I think is really critical in what we're discussing right now, which is you can have incredible amounts of potential energy that you're ready to put into a direction. But if you have too many leaks along the way, you get to the end and you haven't achieved your goal. You've lost all of the energy along the way. It's not performing work. But if you can curate your environment, curate your relationships, keep your focus, guard your time, all of these things, you reduce the energy leaks that usually would be lost to people with different beliefs and people with strong opinions about what you're spending your time on. And just keeping from losing that energy along the way helps you go much further than people that have the best intentions when they set out to achieve something, but ultimately lose steam. And I'm super familiar with this as a personal tendency, which is I find it much easier to start things than I do to, say, improve upon or finish or like refine things. I'm very much I have the energy to create something great and get the momentum going, but when it comes to that sort of like second piece of optimization, I find that really challenging. And so I'm very conscious of how energy behaves throughout the process of creation of something, and how there are periods where if you aren't intentional or you don't have the right help, the right support, you just sort of like lose the drive to do a certain thing or to finish a certain process. And the same is true with any big project or initiative that you want to do in your life. It takes energy over a prolonged period of time. And if at some point you run out of it, or it's leaked too much, or somebody's influenced your mind to the point where you can't muster the energy to keep going, that's a critical risk to you achieving whatever that goal was that you set out for in the beginning.
I love that. And by the way, thank you. Like this is really, really, really nice. Also, the compliment on me. Thank you so much. I want to highlight as a last point from that whole list, one aspect, one point here. It's the stay cheerful and constructive. This is, I think, the really only one that comes very, very natural to me. All the other ones, I have to remind myself, like I should guard my time, like time goes away. Like I have to think myself. I should not like just believe something that someone says. Like all those things kind of take energy to keep reminding yourself. And other people probably have other things that come more natural to them. But the stay cheerful and constructive is the only one probably that comes super easy to me. I was always already the guy that when I saw on TV in, I don't know, like a cop series or something like that, a serial killer, I even tried to see the good thing and why he does that in him, and was like, okay, like what's driving him, like what is kind of the things why he does. Like I was always, I see even in the worst person trying to think like, what's the good in him? Like what can I learn from him? What is the best thing from him? And I'm having a hard time with conflicts also. Like that's a negative part of it. I'm like conflict shy in a way. But this is something that has brought me so many amazing friendships, amazing things, and amazing partnerships along the way. This one point, stay cheerful and constructive. Saylor actually talked about that on my podcast for like 10 minutes, why every salesman has to do that at every single point because people remember the bad things, and he went on a whole thing. But this is something that I pick up on the very, very successful people. Even if you say something stupid or something that is almost attacking them, they are always constructive and cheerful. They probably never contact you again and taking the distance from you. And they are guarding their own time, and they are curating their friends and their environment. But I've never seen like a successful person that was non cheerful and non-constructive in my personal environment. And I've seen it in multiple cases in the early 2 years of my entrepreneurship now, where it brought me a lot of goodwill and a lot of results, where a guest maybe was rude or like half rude or non-respectful, and I stayed always cheerful and constructive and respectful. And after time, they come and actually thank me for that. And I had two, I don't want to call them out obviously, but I have two specific cases of guests that had been on, were kind of like weird, but I stayed always cheerful and constructive. It's one of my best friends now. And it is such a nice relationship. And they apologized for how they reacted and afterwards came back and saying like, hey, like I had a bad day that day. And you never threw it on me, but I'm so sorry that I threw it on you. And this is a small thing I just want to put in there because it's very important to me that with all the optimization, we sometimes lose kind of the human element of like, just stay cheerful and constructive, especially if it's hard, because if it's hard, it means the other person probably doesn't have a good time. I've never seen a person that has a really great time and is very in sync with his life and everything is going good, that all of a sudden there's like hating on people. I've never in my life seen that. Like people that hate on things and like are all of a sudden weird, they usually have some underlying thing. We're going very philosophical but I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, as you're talking, the one thing I think is maybe missing from this list that I would add to it, and what I think is exemplified by your hilarious example with the serial killers, is staying curious. Like, it's so easy to form an opinion about the way someone's behaving, and as soon as you do that, you've cut yourself off from the possibility of learning something. You've cut yourself off from the possibility of understanding something new. And if there's one thing that's challenging for people as they get into their adult life, it's usually to maintain that sense of curiosity, that childlike wonder that makes you an explorer of your world, an explorer of your reality. And when you have that energy, it completely changes the way that you approach reactions. Like you said, rather than hating on somebody for the actions that they took, you're curious about the motivation, curious about what led them to make that decision. And then it's a human thing rather than, dehumanizing just the actions that somebody's taking. And you can have that more connected, that more human experience of relating to people. And I think it naturally opens people up, and other people can feel it too. When you're approaching something with curiosity, it invites them to participate in a different way than if they can feel, and people can feel, that you're just judging them, that you've already made up your mind. It closes off so much in terms of connection with people when you shut off your ability to just continue to be curious. And if there's one thing that I have found that's not only created great results, but just creates a better quality of life, it is to maintain that curiosity. It gives you a much more holistic and balanced way of looking at the world, especially when things are hard, especially when things are confusing, especially when they're emotionally challenging or heavy. Curiosity is one of the easiest ways to lift that burden and to actually make something useful out of it. So, Michael, if you're listening to this, you just got your 11th rule for life. Stay curious.
He's pretty busy, but I like to think that he's been listening to every single episode. But seriously, I heard that from multiple instances around his surroundings, that he is obsessively watching all the content around Bitcoin out there. I'm not sure if this is still true, but one thing how I got him on, because people ask me, how did you get Michael on the podcast? And I tell them, like, I have no clue. Like, he kind of came to me in a sense, because he followed me on Twitter, and then I reached out to him like, thank you so much for following me, do you want to be on my podcast? And he said yes. That's the whole freaking story. And so the only way I think he followed me, which is very impressive, because I think then he is that, like, being curious kind of a guy, because I was a podcaster who had, I think, 2,000 subscribers or something like that. I was up and coming, but I was more like smaller, and like hadn't had huge guests on, or hadn't had any huge success stories up until then. And also the whole monthly audience was a lot smaller before that. And so the only way that I think he followed me and reached out, followed me is the reaching out part, is because he actually like listened to a podcast. Like that's my only explanation why he does that, because why else would he follow me? Like, there's no, I don't come from any background that makes me rich or famous or anything like that. Like, so the only reason why he would follow me is my podcast, and the only reason that he is aware of my podcast is that he listens to my podcast, which is kind of frightening for me. But that's a whole nother podcast.
It just shows you, though, I mean, even the people who are at the top of their game are still curious about learning more. I mean, Saylor's a great example because that is just his kind of ever learning mindset and always synthesizing new ideas. I think it's just in his nature. You could apply it to anybody who's doing something really interesting. I mean, Elon would be another great example. Like, the dude is solving some very hard, very intricate problems that nobody has ever solved before. You can bet that the only way that he's able to get through these is remaining curious about finding a solution, because it would be very easy to just say, not possible, not practical, not economical, like, it's not going to work. But the man is relentlessly curious, like 23 and a half hours a day, about finding a solution to the hardest challenges that are in front of him. And there's so much else that goes into that, but I really think it is a degree of curiosity that allows people like him, like Elon, like Saylor, to just continue to stay connected to the possibility of a solution, of something novel. Otherwise, very easy to get tripped up, very easy to get discouraged, very easy to get blocked by your environment. But with that essence of curiosity, you've got a fighting chance to come up with something very novel.
I want to show you something from Elon. I think he gets a lot of hate from like all sorts of people. He's one of the most hated people on earth, I think. But he's also one of the most loved ones in his communities. And I think his genius is kind of like you kind of have to see the genius behind him, which is hard, I think, for a lot of people. But I want to show you this very small, short clip of his, like that. It's better. And here is basically around his rockets, a YouTuber just asked him a question, and his reaction is so nice. And I think not a lot of CEOs would even do that on camera. Wouldn't even do that off camera, but he just does it on camera. So it's I think a deep insight in his like personality.
You don't even need a cold gas thruster system. You already have hot gas. But this is only for the booster, right? Yes. Although arguably, now you mention it, we might be wise to do this for the ship too. Thanks. Now that we're gonna fix that. Jeez. I'd say that's like one of the biggest improvements that we've made. It occurred to me while I was explaining it to you. I was like, wait, what are we doing? You don't even need a cold gas thruster.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. Isn't that fucking awesome? Like how many CEOs do that and in publicly, like oh shit, like we didn't think about that. Thank you, YouTuber no name, that you just kind of made me think about that. And even admitting that 7 years later, like that was one of the biggest improvements we ever did. Like this is staying curious, and this is the richest man alive. He has all the reasons why not to be curious.
I love that clip so much. That's also like that's a great example of, specifically for people in Bitcoin, just so we can have something to talk about in Bitcoin today. When you're explaining something, in your teaching of it to somebody else, it often uncovers where you're stuck, where you don't fully understand it. And I don't want to make assumptions, but it looked kind of a little bit like that's what happened. Was he was explaining the rationale for why they made a certain decision, and then as he was going through it, realized that there was a gap. And back to not examining your internal environment, your thoughts, your beliefs, like until someone questions them or until you question them, it's very easy to operate under fixed assumptions, completely unchallenged and unexamined. And without a little bit of curiosity, you might miss out on opportunities that can have wide-reaching effects. And this is a great example too of, it wasn't even Elon's curiosity necessarily. It was somebody else's curiosity that influenced creating an incredible outcome for them. So, your energy of curiosity may not even necessarily be for you. Like you, Robin, showing up every day and asking people questions genuinely from your heart of what you're wanting to know about them. It may bring nothing to you. I know it already has, but like it may bring nothing to you personally for long stretches of time. But in your curiosity, you might unlock something for that person. And that impact can be extremely wide-reaching, far more wide-reaching than the people that are impacted by just your personal audience. And that's just another reason. It's not just for you. It's altruistic to be curious, to help unlock the people that in many cases don't get that sort of curious attention in their lives. And it can help them in ways that you don't expect.
That's fascinating. I love that. It's really, really cool. And I think we've went from how to survive in a bear market and all of those things to weird life lessons that I think are really worth considering from people like Saylor and Elon Musk. Elon Musk already the richest man alive. Saylor might be in the rings for that within the next like 10 to 20 years, if you ask me. But yeah, we'll see how it ends up. By the way, now that we talked about Saylor, what's your take on like strategy, on stretch, on the whole thing that Saylor built over the last, now I think like almost 6 years? I mean, strategy is a way older company, but the Bitcoin thing started around 6 years ago.
I think it's brilliant engineering and extremely novel. And what every entrepreneur is looking to create on some level is a massive creation of value that has ideally a pretty strong moat against competitors and is novel in the marketplace. And I think that strategy checks all those boxes. They've introduced some very novel strategies to navigate in a market, and in many ways have overcome the ability to be outcompeted just by sheer amount of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's very unlikely that anybody could catch up in the way that they have. And that gives them a very strong position. And so I don't have a strong opinion of whether people should participate in it or not. I think everybody can make that decision for themselves of what aligns with their values and how they see the space. But in terms of designing a mechanism, I think it's brilliant engineering and brilliant financial engineering. And that even though it's not very performant in environments like this, that over the long run, I believe he's got a winning strategy. And kudos to him, because I don't think anybody can catch up with him.
Me neither. And I think he has a shot at least to be one of the top 5 companies in the world. The execution, and of course, there's a long way to there. I think the company is now 50 billion, and the biggest company in the world is like 5 trillion or something like that, or 4 trillion. So there's a long way to being the biggest company on planet Earth. But he got a good head start with the Bitcoin that he has. One thing I really want to get into today's podcast that I kind of wanted to actually start with, but we kind of got deviated from that a little bit. We're already at 1 hour. Is Bitcoin mining and the relations to Bitcoin mining versus stacking, where Bitcoin mining also fits in as a strategy for individuals, and how you think about that.
Well, it's funny, we got derailed, but in a sense, this is my personal answer to navigating Bitcoin with the right mindset and having an environment and systems that support me having the right mindset. And the reason for that is, we're getting Bitcoin when we're mining it at the cost of production, which, as long as you're procuring energy in the right way, keeping good uptime, getting the right equipment, is often well below the market price. So you're setting yourself up psychologically with a tool that is going to serve you, not just in bull markets, but also in bear markets, because you've got this sort of emotional and mental insulation from the price increases and the price decreases that happen, because you've got this sort of buffer zone. And so for people that are looking at mining, for me, it's not just because I think it can financially outperform. It's also because I think it helps me outperform psychologically. I tell the story pretty often of, I had a streak when I was sort of getting back into Bitcoin and really seriously, of trying to be a trader, and I was no good at it. I mean, it was rough. I was successful some days, very unsuccessful other days. My mental state was a mess. I was not psychologically equipped to be a trader. And so mining for me was the answer to how do I execute on a strategy that helps me accumulate over the long term, builds a mechanism, a machine essentially, to create income, to build assets, and do so in the most efficient way in the best asset in the world. And mining was that answer to me, and it's been a great answer for me. And I think especially because we work with a lot of people who are newer to the space, I think that mining sets people up psychologically to align with the right time horizon. And there's this sort of endemic of people who, when they first get into Bitcoin, want to get in and then get some sort of gain and then get out, and are very much in the make more fiat mindset as they get Bitcoin. Whereas if you educate people right, give them the tools, and then give them the mechanism through mining, I mean, it's a minimum couple year time horizon for you to be in that, probably more like 4 or 5 years in most cases on an individual machine level. And that rewires your decision making, your thinking about the asset to really just buckle up and be in it for the long term. And that makes periods like this, where if I had bought at 126K and watched it go down to 60, like I'd be kind of feeling like I did myself wrong, even though I've got long-term conviction in Bitcoin and I'm, happy to buy the top forever, as we say. It's still like, everybody knows that's experienced this. It still is a little bit of a psychological trip. I'm like, man, I could have gotten in at this point. Whereas if you were just DCAing essentially all the way down and your cost of production was well under 60, maybe it could have been more optimal, but you set yourself up psychologically to not have the same emotional turmoil, the emotional shrapnel that comes from, highly analyzing a decision that you made incorrectly or think that you made incorrectly. So if nothing else, we could talk about all sorts of things around mining. There's so many things to cover, but in the context of what we've said today, I think it's a great mindset tool. And there's nothing to me that builds a mindset better than a learning vehicle, the ability to invest in your own education. And I have found that even people who have been in this space for many, many years and have a lot of Bitcoin, who have never gotten into mining, have never touched it, have never been to a facility, have never learned about ASICs and everything on the back end of that. When they do, the conviction, the understanding, the look in their eye is completely different. You can see that it's changed them. Just like when someone, maybe first sends a Lightning transaction or first sets up a cold wallet, it's a new experience that teaches you more than you ever could from reading or watching a video. It's the tactile. I figured something out. I implemented it. I learned through doing. And mining is that for many people. And since it was that for me, I love sharing that with people. And I think it actually goes a long way. Even if you have 1,000 Bitcoin and one dinky miner somewhere, that miner is still serving a purpose for you and acts as a learning tool. That's part of why I love when people get bit axes. That's your opportunity to directly connect with the network in a way that most people never do. And you're truly participating. And it's you. You're not outsourcing your confidence or your ability to somebody else. You are the one who set it up, who configured it. So I get off my soapbox now.
I love that point so much. And I first will answer to the overall point of experimenting over theoretical learning, and then do mining, Bitcoin mining specifically. And I think the overall experience one is so important. I have a very specific example. I think you can maybe relate to that. I don't know if you've already done that, but I've heard a lot about OpenClaw. I heard a lot about AI agents, and I always thought this will be coming. AI agents will take over some tasks at some point, more and more, and then teams, and then more and more tasks, and they will do more and more of our work, and they will transact with Bitcoin and all of those things. But I didn't truly, fully understand what it means to have an AI agent that actually does work while you're sleeping. Until I set it up on my own mini computer, Start 9 I have at home, that I just like, I ripped out all the Bitcoin things that I did on there, and just like, I'll just use it and put on OpenClaw. StartOS 04 has a native OpenClaw app, which you can super easily install there. And I was like, I will just test that out now and see what I can do with that. I just bought like $30 of credits on OpenAI on the API front, and I was like, let's set it in. Let's see what I can do. Let's configure the settings and all of those things, and then I just ask it, hey, here's my life. What can you do for me? And the amount of use cases that I got was like, shit. Like I should have done that like 2 months ago when it came out. Like that's incredible. And it's like, what does it cost? Like nothing, like almost nothing. Like it cost me maybe $100, maybe $200 a month, and I have a personal assistant that does the things that I would have otherwise like need to pay like a student like $1,000 or $2,000 for that. And he can do it so much better and exactly the way I wanted. I was kind of surprised by all the uses cases that come up now, and I've set it up, and I'm currently working on my first use case. So I'm very early still in my actual setting it up phase and my OpenClaw thing, and the use cases and the brain with like what I can all do with that is already exploded, just from like the first 1-2 days. And it's so silly sometimes how the mind works, because the only real trigger why I installed OpenClaw and made the effort, because it's not that easy. Like you have to put some work into like, how do I do that and all of that. The only reason why I did that, because the creator and founder of OpenClaw comes from Upper Austria like me, and it's like so random because he is not only from Austria, which is already very small, 8 million people, are like it's like a small American city, but he comes from the specific part of Austria, Upper Austria, where I'm also coming from, and also he went to the same schooling system than me, like the HDL schooling system that we have in Austria, which is also very specific to Austria. They don't even have that schooling system in Germany. That specific it is to Austria. And so because that similarity, and he was on the Austrian news cycle and on Twitter and all of that, and I'm like, oh, I should check it out. That was the only reason why I checked it out now. Probably otherwise I would have probably waited and slept on it like half a year more, or like maybe a year more, like whatever. And so yeah, it's another small snippet of stay curious, is take that to the extremes to stay curious.
Stay curious, also stay safe. OpenClaw is like leverage, it's like fire. It's extremely powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility. So for anybody setting them up, please understand that is a powerful tool and can easily wreck your life if you give it too much access. So I highly encourage people to learn about it and even experiment with it. But this is new technology. You should definitely be safe when you're doing your exploration. Keep it in its own environment. I don't have to. There's plenty of guides that can go deeper than anything that I would say. But I just want to tell people, with that curiosity has killed a few cats. So just make sure you're not one of them as you're exploring certain things. That, again, we live in an age where we have extremely powerful tools available to us, like you said, for free. I mean, that's kind of the wild thing, is if you were to take the lens of, let's say, a decade ago or a couple decades ago, you probably imagine that an AI agent this powerful that can execute this many things for you autonomously probably cost a significant amount of money. But this is truly accessible to anybody. I mean, the API credits cost money, but like for the base product to truly just be free and open source, it's kind of wild. It's kind of a wild world that we live in.
And there's even, you can, I forgot how it's called. There's a Llama tool or something like that, where you basically have your own AI that you can also run locally. Like you should have a little bit more powerful device. you don't even need the API credits. I would recommend the API credits long term. I think it's a better choice, but you can run the whole thing yourself on your devices, and basically the device, the electricity cost, then is the only actual cost, which is very, very little to the amount that they can do. But yeah, that's kind of the only downside to curiosity, because if you're curious, you're early, and if you're early, there have not that many people have stepped on that path before. So you're more likely to make mistakes with like Bitcoin self-custody. When you went into Bitcoin in 2012, 13, you maybe lost your money in Mt. Gox or Celsius or other things, or you've ditched your Bitcoin on a hard drive and lost it in a dumpster. It's like being early and curious has its downsides also. But I think in the long run, even if you're not safe, it has like a positive return of investment if you set some guardrails. Like, don't give it access to your bank thing and like credit card and all your WhatsApp. Like, don't do that. Like, figure out, give it the same amount of access that you would give it an employee or something like that. Like, you would also not give an employee, like, here is my credit card, here you have 100K, do whatever you want with it, please do that job. You would also not do that with an employee, so also don't do it with an AI.
Exactly.
But back to the mining, I was actually curious how, I think I've asked you that, but people are so curious because whenever I talk about, oh, you should put something in Bitcoin mining, people always ask me the one question, like, how does it stack up against just DCAing, and how does it stack up against buying Bitcoin? It's probably the question that you're most bored of at this point because you've got it a lot of time. If I had to guess, I don't know, but how do you respond to that?
Yeah, you're right. It's probably the most common question people have, and rightly so, because if you're going to get an asset like Bitcoin, like, what could you get that's possibly better than Bitcoin? And the answer of mining versus just DCA, it's so contextual. I mean, this is the worst answer ever, but it really depends what is going to come out ahead. Like, if you're just home mining with old equipment, probably not going to outperform Bitcoin in any way, and it's just going to be a hobby experiment. If you are say, hosted at good rates and you have efficient equipment, then in many cases you can outperform Bitcoin over the long term. But there's so much that goes into that, and there's so many different variables that come. I would say the most powerful thing to me that matters the most to people, at least at this moment in time, are specifically the tax consequences around mining. And this matters most for US investors, but there are tax codes around the world that have kind of similar provisions. And that is, all of the equipment that you get, that you mine with, is 100% bonus depreciation applicable. So you can write off the entire investment in year one, which, if you're adding that in to the calculation for people, especially people with a high tax bracket, high tax liability, that can be the single thing that makes it a obvious hell yes, and vastly outperforms if you were just to take the same money and buying spot. And just, I think most people are more satisfied in general to not have to give money to the government, and so mining is a way to keep you from having to do that. But as we mentioned before, there's a financial reason to do it. There's a behavioral, psychological, investment reason to do it that I think sets people up for success. And then there's the learning reason. And I think that, even though it's probably the least talked about, is one of, if not the most important qualities of getting into mining, is that you're just getting a deeper look into the asset that you've already put stock in. And I think that gives you a lens that's very different than, I just bought it on Coinbase and now I'm holding it on a cold storage wallet. It's a much deeper connection with the network in many ways. And so that's all I'll say. Everybody's got their own situation. It's part of why we do our consultations for people, is if anybody's looking at getting into mining, we're not just like hard selling you a miner because we think you need a miner. It always starts with discovery, figuring out, is this actually a fit for you? Does this actually make sense for you? Are you in the best position to make the most out of mining, or would buying spot just be a better option for you? Because if I tell you wrong from the outset just because I want to sell you a miner, you're going to remember that, and it's not going to feel good. So we're very serious about evaluating fit and making sure this actually makes sense for you. This is actually something that's going to meaningfully enhance your experience of being in the Bitcoin space outside of just buying Bitcoin. And I wish that were the case for most people making investment decisions on others' behalves. But usually they're not ever asked some of the questions that need to be asked to figure out if you're giving the right thing to the right person.
Very true. Yeah, it's like the reputation and the image that you have as an individual and as a company gets more and more important because there's so many scams out there and so many bad things out there that if someone reaches out to me on Twitter, for example, and none of my followers follow him, I'm like, is it like, do you even trust that? Like, it's hard, like if you have no, like the reputation and the image that you have and that you carry in front of you is like very, very freaking important to all the things that you're doing. I remember one thing, as we are now already in the end of the podcast, that I think was important for you also to mention, and which I already saw, I think from Natalie Brunel and from your wife, is kind of the organization of that. Tell us about the, I think, Women of Bitcoin Summit. Is that correct, the name?
You got it right. I thank you for letting me take a moment. I'm super proud of my wife, Christine Marie, because she has been working tirelessly on the summit with Natalie and Efrat. Already got great turnout of people that are registering, but it is the Women of Bitcoin Summit. It is for those people in your life, specifically women, but men are invited too if you want to come. There's no bouncer at the door that's going to tell you not to show up, but it is geared toward women specifically. So if you're listening to this and you have a woman in your life who you wish would learn more about Bitcoin, maybe has been scared to ask questions, would like kind of a 101 level environment where they can ask questions, they can go on multiple tracks and sort of pick what they want to learn about, but in an environment where it's safe and there's no stupid questions. I'm really excited for the lineup. There's so many incredible speakers, so many incredible topics, a lot of resources. It's going to be a very unique, it's not just like a Zoom call. I mean, I've seen the back end setup of what they're doing. It is intense. It is going to be really, really cool. So that's March 4th and 5th. The website to register and get all the details is womenofbitcoin.io. And I am super excited about the event. I'm super proud of Christine Marie and just really grateful for Efrat and Natalie for being a part of putting this together. I think it's going to be the best women's event that's ever happened in this space. And we need to spread this more to the women in our lives. I mean, that's the missing piece in this. We've got a heavily male skewed industry here, and I'm only contributing to the problem. I mean, this podcast is two dudes, and probably most podcasts are. But for any major trend, you need both genders involved. You need everybody involved. And this is a world-shaping movement. So if you've got someone who you wish would have more involvement in it, or at least get a little bit of exposure to it, then this is the place to go.
Yeah, I think, and this is a really cool thing because every man in this space, not everyone, I would guess, but most men in the space probably have a woman close to them that either is very early to Bitcoin or hasn't heard anything about Bitcoin or is a little bit further down the road. And for all of them, it's a great idea to come to this summit. So I'm looking forward to how it turns out. But it's really cool. But yeah, you were right. The podcast circus is a I don't know the percentage, but like 95, maybe 96% male dominated, which is a hard thing. But yeah, we need more role models like Natalie Prunell. I think also. I think the space needs more like role models that attract other women to the space. I think that's a big thing. But without stretching that too deep, two dudes talking about how to get more women into the space. Let's get to the end routine of the podcast, which you might know from the previous appearances, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, which is your favorite Bitcoin treasury company outside of strategy, and would it be strategy if no constraint?
It would be strategy if there were no constraint. Just, obvious reasons, and I've learned a lot from Saylor. If I were to pick one that's not strategy, I think my favorite one would be Metaplanet. I think that is a one of the well-run treasuries, and that they've got a unique sort of moat being in Japan as well. I don't know if that moat will last forever, but they've got sort of this unique setup in Japan that allows them to be an advantageous play for people there. So that would be my pick for what I think outside of strategy is the most interesting treasury company.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think so too. I had actually recently Metaplanet. Phil Geiger, I think he's the head of business development there on the show, and it was really interesting. I haven't heard like they are like the top 5 in the top 5 stocks of all the retirement funds. I was like, oh shit! Like they have over 200,000 Japanese shareholders of the stock. It's crazy to think about that. So it's an interesting pick. I personally am not invested, but yeah, it's an interesting one. So yeah, thank you so much, Bear, for being on the podcast and for being here and enlightening us. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Easiest way to get in touch would be website is abundantminds.com. You can also find us on pretty much every social platform at Abundant Minds. YouTube specifically is all of our long form content and like the really educational focused content that we do. And that's just Abundant Minds.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.